The Attorney General of the United States, Jeff Sessions, testified today before the Senate Intelligence Committee and, as expected, strongly denied that he has had secret or improper interactions with the Russian government.
A suggestion that I participated in any collusion, that I was aware of any collusion with the Russian government to hurt this country, which I have served with honor for 35 years, or to undermine the integrity of our democratic process is an appalling and detestable lie.
Well, that's what he claims. It's always possible that a high-level Russian defector will appear sometime in the future with documents proving that Jeff Sessions is, in fact, a foreign agent, perhaps of a sleeper cell sent to Alabama during the Cold War and activated at Vladimir Putin's request during the last election. That would be a game-changer. Otherwise, the Russia conspiracy seemed to hit a cul-de-sac this afternoon in the Senate. But that doesn't mean there are no scandals for Congress to investigate. Here's one, maybe the biggest one of all. Our intel services are corrupt, and they're politicized, and they're making it very hard to run the U.S. government. And that may be the point, since they'd clearly like to run it themselves, and they are to some extent. Does that sound like overstatement? Well, consider how much of American politics now revolves around information that's been strategically, often misleadingly and illegally released for political effects. The hearings you watched today are just one example. They took place in part because former FBI Director Jim Comey told senators last week that Sessions may have met Russian Ambassador Kislyak at the Mayflower Hotel in Washington last April. Now, why would Comey think that? Because classified surveillance of Kislyak's conversation suggested it may have happened. That was surveillance released in order to hurt Jeff Sessions, and that, by the way, was apparently false. There are many more examples of this, every day practically. In December, unnamed intelligence sources told the Washington Post that Russia helped Donald Trump win the presidency. A week later, unnamed senior intelligence officials told NBC News that Putin personally was involved in helping Trump win. In February, current and former American officials released the details of a phone call between incoming National Security Advisor Mike Flynn and Ambassador Kislyak of Russia. That call was monitored because Kislyak was being spied on. Flynn's name should have been concealed, of course, but it wasn't. It was unmasked and then leaked, and his career and reputation were subsequently destroyed by all that. Trump's private phone call with the president of Mexico, surveilled by American intelligence and then leaked. His call with the Australian Prime Minister, same thing. With Vladimir Putin, again, leaked by the intel community. How could this possibly have advanced American national security interests, which is what they're supposed to be doing? None of it did. It was entirely political. And then in March, as if to prove this point, a half-dozen current and former intel officials told the New York Times how they'd sought to spread classified intelligence information about the Trump campaign as widely as possible throughout government to ensure it would all eventually leak. Now, leaks are as old as government, and sometimes they are welcome. In general, the public ought to know a lot more about government than it does. But we're seeing something new at work here. These are not leaks from political appointees, the kind that form the basis of Bob Woodward's books, the kind we benefit from in journalism a lot. These are strategic leaks, the release of classified intelligence from people whose job it is to collect and safeguard that intelligence. And in that way, it's an utter perversion of the system. We give enormous power to our intelligence agencies, CIA, NSA, the rest of them. We let them listen to our phone calls, read our email, watch us from satellites. We let them do that so they can keep us safe from foreign threats, not so they can pick our political leaders or devise our policies. We have elections to do those things. In a democracy, we're in charge, not them, not unelected bureaucrats. That's changing, and we ought to be worried about that change. But Congress isn't worried because a lot of people there would rather have the policies they prefer than constitutional government. That is worse than immoral. It's a mistake. Once the bureaucracy has shoved aside an elected government, they can easily do it again. And at that point, it's over. Democracy is dead. Fox News Chief Intel Correspondent Catherine Herridge joins us more on today's hearing.
Well, thank you, Tucker. One of the big moments came when the Attorney General testified that he recused himself in March from the ongoing probe because of his Trump campaign role and Justice Department rules, not his alleged contacts with Russians.
I recuse myself from any investigation into the campaign for president, but I did not recuse myself from defending my honor against scurrilous and false allegations.
Another big moment came when Sessions was challenged by a senior Democrat on claims made last week before the same Senate panel by fired FBI Director James Comey.
Mr. Comey said that there were matters with respect to the recusal that were problematic and he couldn't talk about them. What are they?
Why don't you tell me? There are none, Senator Wyden. There are none. I can tell you that for absolute certainty. You tell this is a secret innuendo being leaked out there about me, and I don't appreciate it.
And Sessions debunked widespread media reports that he met with the Russian ambassador in April of last year at Washington's Mayflower Hotel during a major policy speech given by then-candidate Trump. Sessions also insisted he was not blocking Congress when he refused to answer questions about his discussions with the president, citing historic Justice Department policies. Also today, Fox News confirming that the Columbia Law School professor who served as an intermediary between Comey and a New York Times reporter, providing information from memos documenting Comey's conversations with the president. That law professor is now providing relevant material to the special counsel, Robert Mueller. Tucker.
Catherine Harris, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Well, during today's testimony, Attorney General Sessions expressed his frustration, you just saw it, over the use of anonymous leaks to sabotage his career.
But some of these leaks, as you well know, are extraordinarily damaging to the United States security. And we have got to restore a regular order principle. We cannot have persons in our intelligence agencies, our investigative agencies, or in Congress leaking sensitive matters and staff. So this is, I'm afraid, will result in, is already resulting in investigations. And I'm fear that some people may find that they wish they hadn't leaked.
Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney represents New York State. He's been a critic of the Attorney General for months now. Now that Sessions has finally testified, has his view changed? He joins us now to tell us. Congressman, thanks for coming on.
Good to be with you.
So I don't expect you to agree with the Attorney General's policies or his core beliefs as a senator, but I think we can both agree that when the former FBI director comes into open testimony and suggests, as he did, that Sessions had some sort of untoward ties to Russia or done something wrong that he couldn't explain publicly and therefore had to recuse himself from the Russia investigation. That's impugning a man's character without being specific about it, therefore unfair, and it's awful to do that to Sessions.
Well, I think you're putting a little bit of a spin on it. The fact is that the Attorney General did recuse himself because of his conflicts in the area, and so that's all the FBI director was saying.
That's not what he said. He actually said the opposite.
Excuse me, I appreciate that there was a bit of I appreciate that there was a bit of an air left there of impropriety, and I agree with you, is what I'm trying to say.
No, what he said was there were other reasons. I think I'm quoting him. There are other reasons, but I can't say what they were in public. He goes behind closed doors with the senators and says, we believe that he may have met with the Russian ambassador a third time at the Mayflower Hotel in April. That's exactly what you don't want the guardians of your national intelligence to do, use it for political reasons unfairly against a citizen.
Right, but you wouldn't have said that about Mark Felt, who was an FBI agent who was deep throat.
I'm not sure what you mean. I would always say that it's wrong for intelligence officers or people whose job it is to hold these secrets to use them against others for political reasons.
Well, let me just stop you right there. So you would prefer that we had never known about the Watergate scandal?
I would prefer that people's jobs and careers and reputations weren't destroyed by the selective leaking of inaccurate information.
Right. Well, a lot of White House aides went to jail over Watergate. Their careers were destroyed.
But that's exactly the point I'm making.
It is exactly the point.
The point I'm making is that the former FBI director and a series of Democrats in Congress suggested that Jeff Sessions had done something improper with Russia. They weren't specific about it because they didn't have the facts. They were trying to impugn his character, his reputation. He testifies openly today, and at the end of it, are you convinced that he's not a Russian agent?
Listen, I am actually not that concerned with what Jeff Sessions did, and I think you are making a fair point that he has come in for a lot of suggestions of inappropriate activity with the Russians without a lot of proof. But there is a mountain of evidence that people like Michael Flynn and Paul Manafort were getting paid improperly, lied about it, are very likely to face criminal prosecution. As a matter of fact, exactly that. Michael Flynn has admitted taking tens of thousands of dollars for a speech in Moscow, didn't disclose it. As a former military officer, he was required to, didn't get permission, lied about it on his forms, and did the same thing with his interactions with Kislyak. That's almost certainly a crime, Tucker, and I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned that we not muddy up the two things. You can be properly worried about people leaking.
Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General of the United States, just testified all afternoon. Mike Flynn didn't. I mean, I'm talking about the sitting Attorney General who has been the subject of these implications that he's somehow betraying his country.
Right. And when you take these positions, sometimes you take some hits. And the fact is that the last time he testified falsely under oath. That's not in dispute. He testified falsely about a meeting with the Russian Ambassador Kislyak, who we know is the chief spy master here in the U.S.
Well, actually, it is in dispute.
So that's why there were some questions.
Let's not, if you're going to stipulate it, let's be clear. It is in dispute, and his position is, I was not acting. He was asked by the senator from Minnesota, were you acting as a Trump surrogate? His position was he wasn't. Okay, so like there's a different interpretation.
Well, no,
are you suggesting that he was having improper contact with the Russians? Like, what are you saying?
Did not say that. Excuse me. What I said was he testified falsely, and he admitted as such later when he went out and sought to amend his remarks. He also failed to correct that testimony for months. That's why there are some questions.
I don't think he admitted that he testified falsely.
I think if you watch his press conference, he said
I've spoken about it on this set.
Right.
And my only point is, look, what is this about?
Well,
it's about the implication that he's working for the Russians.
Well,
and like, what the hell is that?
No, your point just changed. The fact is that he testified falsely, and that raised some questions. That's why we want to hear about him.
I'm not accepting that point, and neither is he.
There's a couple other important points. Let's talk about those. One, he recused himself from the Russian investigation.
Correct.
The President of the United States said that the firing of the director of the FBI was at least in part or certainly related to that investigation. There's a lot of legitimate questions about why Jeff Sessions was involved in that when he's recused. That's also why he was brought up. So are you saying,
are you, not my job to defend Jeff Sessions, but it does seem nonsensical to say that the head of the Justice Department, who oversees the director of the FBI, can't supervise the director of the FBI because there's a Russian investigation going on. Is he recusing himself from running the Justice Department?
No, but he should be recused from a conversation about firing that individual because of that investigation, and that's the point.
I think everyone would agree that there are multiple reasons Jim Comey was fired.
Well, the president gave us the primary one.
Well, the president gave us a number of them, and one of them was his conduct more generally, his conduct earlier, whatever. But the point is, Jeff Sessions runs the Justice Department. Are you saying that he shouldn't be involved in decisions about the future of the FBI director?
In fact, I think what we understand is that Rod Rosenstein and Jeff Sessions gave reasons why Jim Comey might be dismissed. I happen to agree with those concerning his conduct in the last campaign. But it was the president who said, I was thinking about Russia, and that's the point. Okay. The point is that if the firing's about Russia and Sessions is recused from Russia, he should not be involved in the firing. It's pretty simple stuff.
Okay, it's not actually simple in any way, and you're making it so because it makes a clear political hit. But the truth is, it's complex. There are a lot of reasons, and you may agree or disagree with some of them, but it's not just about Russia. And the point is, again, the guy runs the Justice Department. You don't want him to. You didn't support him being there in the first place. I get it, but a Democrat didn't win the presidency, so you didn't get to make that choice.
Right.
And so the idea that he can't run the agency he's in charge of.
Didn't say that.
Okay, so what are you saying exactly?
Didn't say that. He can absolutely run the agency for as long as the president wants him to, but he should not be involved in Russia.
Okay, so
and the firing was about Russia.
Look, wouldn't it just be a little easier? Wouldn't it be a little easier if you disagree with the Trump administration's policies on various things, to just explain why you disagree with those, rather than try to derail the whole executive branch of government with an insane Russia conspiracy? Can we just admit Jeff Sessions was not working on behalf of the Russians? He's a patriotic American just like you are. And we're going to drop the innuendo and the McCarthyite tactics because it's counterproductive.
Right. Well, what we know is that all of the people we pay to do this tell us that we faced an unprecedented attack by a hostile power. Some of us want to know what the extent of that was. In the last few days, we've learned that the Russians now access 39 states' electoral systems. We don't know why. We don't know the extent of the damage. That's on top of what we knew about what they did to the DNC.
I'm sorry. I thought that Jeff Sessions was a senator from Alabama and Donald Trump was a presidential candidate when that happened. Barack Obama was the president when that happened. I mean, look, you're conflating things. The truth is Jeff Sessions had nothing to do with Russia hacking into various computer systems, and there's no evidence to suggest otherwise. So why continue this charade?
Tucker, what we know is that the Russians were laser-focused on lifting the sanctions against their regime as a result of the invasion of Crimea and Ukraine. They were successful in having the Republican Party platform changed. We don't know how or why. We should.
That's ridiculous.
Let me finish.
That's absurd.
Excuse me.
You're saying things are just dumb. We don't know that.
No, I mean, they did change the platform, and we don't know why.
The platform committee, I didn't see any. Was Kislyak there? I didn't see any Russians in the platform committee.
Excuse me. We know the platform committee was changed, and that was an objective.
Because of the Russians. Were they in the meeting?
I didn't say that. If I did, I said we should find out why it was changed. But here's the point.
No, you just said the Russians got it changed in the Republican platform.
Well, then I misspoke.
You don't know that.
No, and I wouldn't make that allegation, but we ought to get to the bottom of it. No, listen to me. Listen, Tucker.
So anyone who's against I'm against sanctions on Russia. Why? Does that make me a tool of Putin?
Because you don't care about the invasion of Ukraine or Crimea?
No, I don't think those are central to American interests. Actually, no. I have a legitimate policy disagreement. Am I a spy too?
No, you're not a spy.
Oh, I'm not. So we can have a legitimate disagreement without you calling me names?
But it is a mystery why they changed that platform. But listen, here's the larger point that I think we're addressing. Let me finish. Is that the fact is that the Russians engaged in this attack. We should find out why. We should do it in a way that's fair and that gets to the facts. And Bob Mueller should be allowed to do his work.
He is allowed to do his work. You're implying that the Russians were somehow in charge of the Republican Party's platform, that they had an influence on the positions of the candidate or the campaign of the party. Can I ask you a question? Does it bother you that the administration officials are refusing to answer without invoking executive privilege in front of a United States Senate committee?
It depends what. I mean, I think there's a look, I always want to know more information rather than less. But I do think it's fair for government officials in any administration to say that is privileged information I'm giving to someone I'm working for. That's a long-standing principle. But the President hasn't invoked executive privilege. As you know, that's exactly right. And so on what basis is the Attorney General refusing to testify? Well, he could say, look, you know, there's no national interest at stake. There's no reason for me. I don't want to divulge what I said to the President. And if it comes down to it, we're going to invoke executive privilege. Okay, you could debate that. I don't have strong feelings about it. What I have strong feelings about is that Democrats are trying to win a political argument by impugning the character of people by suggesting they're treasonous. Right. These committees are chaired by Republicans. You understand that? I'm aware. Both committees. I don't care. And the Senate. I literally don't care of the party ID because people like you are leading an innuendo-based charge against your political opponents. You're talking about Senator McCain and Senator Burr, and you're talking about Mike Conaway, the Republican interim chair in the House. I think they're at fault for letting this grotesque charade continue. Well, those aren't Democrats, Tucker, so let's distinguish those two things. And on the subject of executive privilege, you were outraged on this network in 2012 when the Fast and Furious Committee was not allowed to get information without. I don't remember my outrage at the time. Right. Well, consistency is a difficult thing. Luckily, we looked it up. Okay. And on this, okay. Oh, you got me there. You got me there. You were outraged. No, I was in Moscow taking orders, getting my payments. Thank you, Congressman. Why are you not outraged? I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. We can figure out commercial break until we have to go. We interviewed Sessions 3 months ago on March 2nd. During that interview, he was entirely forthcoming, or seemed to be, about the nature of his meetings with Kislyak during the RNC in Cleveland. According to news reports, you met twice with the Russian ambassador in person, Ambassador Kislyak, and had one phone conversation with him. Is that the extent of your contact with him, those three